So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Please like, share, and subscribe to get new episodes, videos, and other updates. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. I'm your host, Manuj Aggarwal, and today we are talking with Michael DeAloia. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your last name.
It's a tricky Italian name.
Sorry?
It's a tricky Italian name.
Yeah. He's in the business of producing businesses from Cleveland for the world. Michael has more than 15 years of experience partnering with organizations to develop businesses and economic growth initiatives. Through his work at several startups and emerging growth companies in Northeast Ohio, Michael has gained an extensive understanding of the culture and needs of high growth companies with a particular focus on technology. He holds a bachelor's degree from Xavier University and an MBA from Case Western. He's a second lieutenant from the Ohio Military Reserve. He knows everything one should know about emergency assistance and natural disaster logistics. And last but not least, he is the chief executive officer of the Porch Media Network. So welcome, Michael.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. All right, let's jump in. So tell us a little bit about your work with Porch Media Network.
Yeah, well, Front Porch is in the business of creating, producing, and distributing podcasts globally. We started the business in January of 2017. It was myself and two interns. Mm-hmm. And our investor handed me a 10 terabyte disk of content that she wanted to put into podcasts. And from that disc, we started off with 4 shows our first year, probably did 12 last year. And now we're past 20 some shows on our 3 distinct podcast networks. And we're growing like a weed. Where sometimes in life you feel like you're just holding on for dear life. You're on this rocket ship.
Yeah.
And that's precisely where we are today with obviously the podcast industry is very hot, and our shows are starting to take root and find an audience, and that's been exceptionally gratifying. We've grown to 12 employees, and looks like we're going to hire our 13th pretty soon. And you've made it as a company when you hire your first intern. So our first intern started on Monday as well.
Nice, very awesome. All right, so it sounds like you help other businesses. Like, is it like a platform where other producers can jump on and sort of establish their business?
Yeah, that's a recent phenomenon for us. We originally started off producing our own shows.
Okay.
But since last November, we launched a new network called Evergreen Podcast. Mm-hmm. And that network is a mix. We do our own shows, but we also have producers coming on who have their own. They don't have to be in Cleveland. It really is an international platform, and we obviously distribute their podcasts for them. And that's a big movement right now. The big shift in podcasting is independent podcasts starting to move onto a network, much like a ABC, CBS, NBC, sure. That collection of shows.
Yeah. And what is the benefit of doing that for an individual producer, maybe like for myself?
Well, the benefit obviously is on the sales cycle, that we can help with advertising and sponsorships. The network itself sells the entire downloads of the network as advertising and sponsorship vehicle, whereas an independent, you might not be able to sort of aggregate those types of numbers.
Got it. So it's like everybody's content is pooled, and then you have sort of bulk deals that happen.
That's correct.
Okay, so I understand. So the theme of the show is bootstrapping. So you mentioned investor. Like, did you take a lot of investments early on, or did you bootstrap it mostly yourself?
Year one for this particular company was heavily bootstrapped between myself and our key investor at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten, the dollar amounts have gotten much larger since we started, because we're growing at such a rapid rate, to the point where we've got a firm commitment from the family that has invested in us to continue for a period of time. But we've finished up a pitch deck, and we're starting to shop that around to get some additional outside capital. So I'm actually heading up to New York to talk with a few groups, as well as some groups in Cleveland, to hopefully cement an outside round that would be shared by our current investors. Bootstrapping is not an uncommon thing for me. I've done a number of startups. My first one that I did in Cleveland was a company called Blue Bridge Networks, which is still around and in downtown Cleveland. And I had a friend who owned a building, and he was like, my fifth floor tenant left me, and they built out something, and I don't know what it is, but if you can come by and check it out. So I walk in, I'm like, oh, it's a data center room. This would be great. How much do they want for it? He was like, well, I think they just want to give it away. So we essentially bought this huge data center room for $1 back in 2003. Wow. And then bootstrapped that. We finally raised $3.5 million, $500,000 of which came from Cisco Capital. We, starting to get some national dollars in. And that was a really profound experience of literally sitting around a card table with three other founders and trying your best with this really inexpensive asset that is really expensive to operate, and trying to get that thing moving.
That's a great story.
Something on a smaller scale here. This is not data center business. We're not buying a lot of infrastructure per se, but the production of a show does cost money.
All right, that's an amazing story. So I mean, the lesson is anybody can bootstrap. It may not be common for you, but it may be common for you. But a lot of people have apprehensions about bootstrapping, and that's sort of the message that we want to convey through this podcast. Now let's talk about Cleveland. So I understand that you have like very close ties with Cleveland, and there's a purpose that you're trying to serve by building this business in Cleveland as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. I'm not originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I moved up here to attend grad school at Case Western Reserve, and I was just immediately smitten by the city. I had never seen Cleveland. I got accepted into Case, and when I started to drive up, there's a corner where you turn on I-77, the main highway into the city. There's a massive steel factory, and it was shooting flames out of the plumes of the factory. And I was like, man, I've hit a home run. I love this city because it is so blue collar, so granular. It has definitely gone through some challenging times. In 1950, there's nearly 1 million people living in the city itself. There's probably 380,000 today. So that large population decrease happened with the large acceleration of companies leaving and closing down. I love that blue collar, hard work ethic that's embedded here. I also love Cleveland because no one's ever told me no. I mean, I've done a lot of interesting startups and just pet projects for myself. Now, getting back to the city of Cleveland itself, I worked for 2 mayors at the city level, city government level, and where I was known as the tech czar for the city of Cleveland. And my job was to help shift the city from this old industrial city to more of the new economy. And how do you do that when the mindset is still stuck back in the old economy sector? So it was a fascinating run. I love Cleveland even more because of that experience. I got to meet a lot of people, a lot of building owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. And then following that, I was asked by the large daily newspaper here, the Plain Dealer, to become the tech columnist. Okay. And so I wrote for the newspaper for 5 years. Now, having grown up in a very small city south of here, you say, hey, you're going to work for mayor instead of a large city. And right from that's the craziest, nutty story I've ever heard in my life. And yet it proves that in Cleveland, you can create your own destiny. You can do the things that you want to do. and make a big difference in the city. We were lucky. I helped move 37 tech companies into the city of Cleveland.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. About 1,000 new jobs. I spent pretty close to 20 million of city money to rejuvenate buildings and parts of town that needed infrastructure and new designs. And today, downtown Cleveland is probably the hottest downtown in the United States. It is a boom town. New apartment towers going up, new condos, new hotels. It is night and day from when I started, almost 15 years ago at the city until today. And I'd like to think I had a little bit to do with that.
That's awesome. That's a great story. So there was something that happened. Like you said, the population shrunk. Like, was there any disaster, any drastic change that happened that caused it, or was it just gradual?
Well, it started in the late 50s. Say 59 was when you started to see the population decrease. But from 1970 to 1980, you almost lost a good third of the population. It happened. The seeds were planted many years ago, but when it finally hit, it happened pretty quick. It was the loss of your industrial base, primarily. The city was a huge manufacturing center, probably one of the largest in the United States, and it just didn't shift to whatever you want to call the new economy, whereas Pittsburgh and Chicago and other places clearly moved in a different direction much sooner than we did.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. So what can you tell us about that interesting initiative of yours, entrepreneurs and residents, that you're running in Lakewood, Ohio? So is it like a startup incubator, or what is it about?
Yeah, here's another opportunity to kind of parlay my experience into a civic endeavor, which I really dig. So Lakewood is the city right outside of out of Cleveland, so they share a common border. I didn't want to move too far from the city. My wife and I, we had a child, and she wanted to move to. We lived in Ohio City, which is this up and coming area near downtown, and she just wanted to get away. Yeah, your typical, we have a kid, we got to move thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to move too far. In fact, we can see downtown from our house. We live on Lake Erie, so I can see the lake and downtown. It's a very cool area. But the city of Lakewood approached me to kind of parlay my experiences with starting companies and my expertise with the city of Cleveland to do something here. And one of the first things we decided to do was build an incubator in the city of Lakewood. Lakewood is the third largest city in Cuyahoga County. So there's 60-some cities in Cuyahoga County. This area is crazy, but Cleveland's the largest, and then Parma, then Lakewood. And Lakewood didn't have any infrastructure to help entrepreneurs.
I see.
So we created an incubator with a partner called Launch House. And we had, believe it or not, we had Lyft in there for a while because they just started their Cleveland operations. We had a number of tech companies and energy companies in there. It was fantastic, to the point where we had to move it out of this building into a building down the street because it was just getting too big. And there was a lot more requests for privacy. It was just a big open room. So they wanted more conference rooms, more private areas. And so we moved it down the street, and it's starting to flourish. It's really, really exciting.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about this whole incubator thing. A lot of entrepreneurs in our audience, and they may want to kick off their startups. What are the benefits of joining an incubator, and what kind of costs are involved?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why people have this hesitancy to walk down the path of entrepreneurship is, one, the loss of income, and two, how long can I afford to play this role? We wanted to make it very inexpensive, so it was like $125 a month, and you had full access to the room and TVs and all this other technology, and then you had access to me in the city of Lakewood. So if you needed to say, I'm interested in moving into a new office space, or I need to hire people, I was the conduit to help them with a number of resources around the city. Awesome. So yeah, it was a really nice, inexpensive way for someone to start and have access to ideas, concepts, but also what I found fascinating here. So we opened it right next door to our own studio here at Front Porch Media. Was the interactivity of different people and different cultures different thought processes getting together to do something
Yeah.
super special.
Yeah, that's exciting for sure. I mean, startups by themselves are exciting, and when you put a number of them together, I'm sure it's a crazy experience for sure.
Yeah, I miss them not being here. I wish we still had it here, but we were growing too, so we ended up taking over the incubation space, and they moved to a larger facility.
I see. All right. So onwards and upwards, I guess. Tell me, like, you were handling so many projects at the same time. You're working with so many organizations. Time management could be, an issue, and a lot of people struggle with it. So how do you manage your time across all these activities that you're handling?
Yeah, I wish I had a secret sauce for that. I am a night owl by trade, so I get a lot of finished at night.
I see.
I'm actually wrapping up a book, so typically I'll work here from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock at night. I go work out, spend time with my kid, and then I write my book till 11, and then it's all over again. Time management is one of the most critical things, and I think you would agree that you have to learn. You need the discipline of whatever your lane is making sure you're in that lane, and there's these outside influences.
Yeah.
Just cannot intrude, and it's tough because sometimes you got to tell people, like, I'm in a hole for a few months.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you when I get out. That's a tough thing to say to people that you love or respect and admire. But I think those who are in the know would respect that. Like, yeah, you go do what you need to do and get it finished. And I'll see you when you decide to come out of that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I mean, it is a challenge for sure. Like, I've been very almost anal about prioritization and making sure that I only look at the tasks which are very important and impactful and delegate the rest. So, and still, it's a complete struggle, and it's a lifelong learning process, I guess.
Delegation is one of the hardest things I've had to learn too. Mm-hmm. And we've got a great staff, and they're all very young. We've kind of hand selected people who we thought would fit into the culture and mindset of what we're trying to do, and then try and teach them the startup experiences that we have at the management executive level. And it's sometimes it can be a little frustrating. You're biting your lip a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I love is our staff is starting to take control. Like, they're actually writing our strategic plans now and our marketing plans, and they're coming to us asking for a little advice, counsel. What would you nip? What would you talk? How would you do it differently? And then they run.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be, and that's helped me with my time management, is finally getting the staff, built up to where they feel like they can take everything on themselves.
Yeah, that's a very important lesson, for entrepreneurs. Learn to delegate and encourage your team to take action. And then, as you said, like, once they are at a stage where they can sort of run the show themselves, and you can get into more strategic thinking, that's the best case scenario for any company, I think.
Amen. I'm a firm believer of that. So we're simpatico with that thought.
Awesome. All right. So, I mean, you have accomplished so much and you have helped so many people, but I'm sure you had your share of mistakes. So can you tell us, some of the most critical mistakes that you made, or I should put it this way, like, the mistakes that made you learn the most critical lessons?
Yeah. The largest company I'd ever bought until recently was back in 1999. And I was working at National City Venture Capital. The bank isn't around anymore, but one of the outcrops of that experience was I got introduced to this very troubled coffee chain in Akron, which is a little city south of here. And I bought it, and I had overextended myself, and I didn't have the management team to help. There were a lot of issues with it. And day one, I should have known there's just 3 or 4 things that happened in quick sequence on day one that I was like, I have really gotten in over my head with this particular opportunity. It was my second MBA for sure, because one of the things they really don't teach you at the graduate level for an MBA is really operation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless you come from that. And I hadn't. Before that, I'd been in banking and venture capital, and you think but you don't really know what it is about a company until you get in there and do it. And I made every mistake possible. In fact, we were talking about a few days ago where near the end it was getting really bad. We're starting to miss payroll, and payroll to me is sacred. Yeah, these are people who are doing everything they can to propel you in your business, and to start missing that really had a profound effect on me. Yeah. Recently management team didn't get paid until a few days after we had made sure everyone else got paid. These are important, just little things that you learn when you get into the operation of a business.
Yeah, for sure. So don't overextend yourself, and be prepared to learn the things that were not taught in degree programs. So those are
my first day on the job at this coffee company, we had coffee. We had a coffee factory. We roasted coffee. We had little stores all over the city. And day one of my delivery van caught fire. And then an hour later, someone in one of our stores bit into a muffin, and it had a rivet in the muffin. So they broke their 2 front teeth.
Oh my God.
I was never taught this in grad school on how to deal with this issue. And you just had to, all right, let me logically think through how this is going to go. I've got the fire department on one phone and my store manager on the other, detailing me these tragedies that are unfolding on day one, on my first day.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, this is life. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. So now let's talk about the work that you have done. Like you seems like you have passion for civic action and helping the community. So what role has that played in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, it's helped. I've been introduced because of my time as the Texar and entrepreneur residence. I've been introduced probably to a set of people that I never would have gotten introduced to otherwise. And I mean, you can champion yourself about how great you really are, but it's the people around you who really kind of, my feeling is the community kind of makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And so I've been introduced to just some really wonderful individuals who've had faith in me. I mean, in the last 5 years, I've probably raised more money for all the companies I've been involved with than I ever have before. And it's because of the people that I've met and the trust that's been established.
Yeah.
So very important to me.
Yeah.
Is we kind of built our own ecosystem of investors and idea people. Like, we come up with an idea and like, yeah, you take care of that. We'll all invest and I'll stay and do my thing. It's really been a wonderful experience of all these entrepreneurs, investors that are working together.
Awesome. But I mean, it started with you first, expressing your desire to give back or actually taking action and giving back, isn't it?
Well, I have to say the city of Cleveland, I've never been more honored to do anything in my life, because the city really merited a new beginning. Mm-hmm. And people were so down on the city, especially a lot of the politicians and civic leaders. All they had known for most of their life was retreat. Like, the city was in full fail for so many years.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, my God, we got all these assets in front of us. Why aren't we using them to the full potential that they should be? And it was me and 10, 15 other young people. I can't take full credit, but all of us working together to plant these seeds. Like, Cleveland's awesome. We can do a lot of amazing things. And so mine just happened to be in the entrepreneurial and tech space. But when I started, I think 3% of the total jobs in Cleveland were technology jobs. It's now like 16%. It's the third largest hiring base.
Yeah.
Northeast Ohio. Now, like I said, I just planted seeds.
Yeah.
But the belief that you can do this is now cemented. Like, yeah, people really feel like, yeah, it's a great place to start a tech company. My one thing that I wish was more relevant or evident here is capital. Cleveland still lags behind other cities in capital flows of coming in to support these groups.
Yeah. That's true for majority of the city. Like, most of the capital is locked up in these like big pockets, New York and Silicon Valley and whatnot. But I keep sort of stats on the cities, and Cleveland is rising for sure, particularly in the tech space. So congratulations on all your efforts and success. So, I mean, the lesson to be learned is that, anybody can take action, not only for yourself, but for the community. And in the long term, it pays off as, whatever you put out there comes back, right?
Well, I agree with that. If you're a regular entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur or an advocate, just getting out there and having your voice heard is the key thing. It's all on your execution, whether it's a business plan or, your civic issue that you want to get across and solve. Yeah. It's all on execution.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about execution then. So, sales and marketing is a huge part of running a company. So, and you seem to have done very well at that. So tell us, what are some of the key pieces of advice you'll give to young entrepreneurs or first-time entrepreneurs about sales and marketing?
Yeah, it costs twice as much and takes twice as long as you will ever think. Uh-huh. We started this business again in 2017, and to be honest with you, none of us were podcast. We're podcast enthusiasts, but not experts in podcasting. Uh-huh. Sales and marketing have been probably the most challenging things for us. Now, you can see me. I'm sitting in front of like these podcast tiles. These are all of our show tiles behind me. Creating a show, easy. We spent a lot of money in our distribution model of how to get it out to the globe. We've been in 120 countries, which is really cool. Our downloads are rising. The monetization of that increase in downloads has been a trick for us, and quite frankly, for most. We're still burning through cash. We've got our costs controlled, but the sales and marketing just haven't hit the tempo that we want. Mm-hmm. I call it laggard revenue. Yeah. Now we're seeing upticks, but it's still not to the point where we're kind of break even on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. On a gross margin basis, yes, but not on a full operating profit basis. So, we're trying to figure it out. We think we've got some things figured out. There's a lot of cool technology behind how to get these things out and how to get it monetized. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to break some rules and conventions in the podcast industry that you need a certain amount of downloads to be profitable. A couple of our shows who are below that kind of national model, what a download should be to get money, are lower, but we're starting to get some revenue on these shows because of two things, really: the demographics that we're going after and the engagement of those demographics. So they're listening to a podcast more than 100%, which is they're going back and listening to it again. Okay. And that's really energizing our advertisers. We've had some really interesting advertisers, Hover, great courses. And for a little group in Lakewood, these are monumental moments for us to have these groups, and they've been very pleased with what we've accomplished, but we need more. And so we just started building our sales organization last July. It's been a year since we hired a chief revenue officer, implemented a full process, because before that it was all like, we got to build a catalog. We need shows. And we spent a lot of money on that. So I wish I had the holy grail for a podcaster, but I will say it always takes longer than you think. Yeah. And to me, it's like building a monthly reoccurring revenue business at this point. We've got sunk cost in production and distribution, and now we got to start, getting those advertising dollars layered on top. It's going to take easily 2 more years before you start to see significant profitability and positive cash flow. But we know where we're going, and we know what to do.
Yeah, those are the lessons. Like like a lot of entrepreneurs, they sort of ignore sales and marketing earlier on. They're just busy building the company. But I think to your point, like just keep at it, and then don't sort of lose sight of the revenue. And yeah, I mean, things happen slowly for sure.
It's okay to take outside advice too. I mean, I'm not the oracle, all-knowing oracle. We hired someone who had deep radio experience, and that the language translated from radio to podcasting, because they talk in the same language, advertisers. And that's had a great influence on our conversations. Mm-hmm. Now it's on us to start closing the deals that are in front of us. Awesome. I can say that our pipeline's probably grown 5 or 6 times since we brought in a chief revenue officer and an account manager. Mm-hmm. And I think those will continue to climb. But it took us a long time to get there. A lot of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly, the very rich and successful ones, they are sort of, portrayed as vultures or sharks, or, somebody who are ruthless. But talking to you, I get a totally different vibe. Like you're seems like a very passionate social citizen and want to help out the community. So tell me, in your experience, what is the reality? Are most entrepreneurs sort of ruthless and self-centered, or they are more giving like yourself?
I can't speak for the entire universe of entrepreneurs. I can speak about my universe.
Yeah.
And sure, you have friction with a few people. There's no question that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But the group that the hundreds of entrepreneurs that I've met, and the dozens that I get to work with now, I have to say they've been the most genuine, nice people, because they all want you to succeed. That was one of the personal lessons for me, was being a champion for others. It's not an easy lesson, because you're so focused on, well, I got a kid, I got a wife, I got to provide. We've got our own things that we need to take care of.
Yeah.
But the lesson from other entrepreneurs giving me one, more important than their time, their insight, their knowledge base, the invitation to come see them, personally on their turf, which is always a fascinating thing, to go see other people, how they work.
Sure.
The money and the cash, that all came in, the investments, that came much, much later. The establishing of trust. But I have to say, more than anything, everyone that I've surrounded myself with wants each and every other person to succeed, to be wealthy, healthy, and wise.
Yeah.
That may not happen with everybody, but yeah, and you pre-select, right? I'm sure you run into entrepreneurs, you're like, that's a cool individual, but I want to keep them at arm's length. There's something there that I don't. Yeah. Everyone has that internal thermometer.
Yeah.
Of who's good and bad.
Sure.
Good people can figure that stuff out.
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating for me as well. Like obviously I come from humble roots as well, but as I approach successful people, I find them to be helpful. Like not sort of dismissing, and even if they don't know the answer, they are polite, and in many cases they do help out. So it's a good community, and I just want to share that with the entrepreneurs in the audience, that you don't have to be this mean self-centered person to be an entrepreneur. So nice people can be business folks as well.
I think the nice, you don't want to be taken advantage of, obviously, but I think the nicer you are, the more you give back, it comes back tenfold. I just really believe there's karma out there in the universe. It's always seemed to found me, and I think Ronald Reagan said, I'm a firm believer in hard luck, because the more I work, the better, the more I have of luck. And that's true if people know you're a hard worker, and that you're honest and you're good, and they're going to support you. And that's just how I feel.
Awesome. Now, what about some of the nitty-gritty details of how you run your business? Like, do you have any processes, like any advice on how to set up a business? Any software or technologies you use to run the business? Anything that you can share about that, the operation side?
Yeah, I don't know how we would do this business without software as a service, because we subscribe to about 40 different services to get our message out and our podcast. One is early on we established financial and administrative control. We've got a great relationship with the bank. Mm-hmm. Payroll is processed every 2 weeks, and we are really honed on this process of the employees can work, and we'll take care of the administrative task at hand. They shouldn't have to worry about these things. Mm-hmm. 2, we created a culture where we can debate an idea or a thought. We can argue about it, brother and sister, right? Have a little tumult. But once we decide to do something, we're going to go have fun, and we're going to get it implemented and executed as quickly as possible.
That's good.
Everything is process controlled here. We are process geeks. Production has a process. Social media has a process. Marketing has a process. And we meet. We have 2 key meetings every week. So I don't want to overpopulate people's calendar with meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a sales meeting every Monday. What's happening this week? What can we close? What's the forecast? How are we going to? What are new clients? How can I help? How can I open my Rolodex, my LinkedIn account? We're talking about strategizing with relationships to close deals.
Awesome.
And then we have a staff meeting every Tuesday, and that's where the real culture comes out, the real big communications are the big thoughts. How are we going to implement these big thoughts? What are the tactical things we need to accomplish during the week? And then we just recycle every week on those two things.
That's great.
Yeah, it's communication at the end of the day, is being able to, we know where we're going, this is how we're going to drive, and everyone's on the same page. What we've professed, though, is we really want people to constantly review that process, tell us when it's not working, when it may have worked 6 months ago, it's not working today, things have changed, this is how we're going to modify that. We're always, and I share an office with our Chief Creative Officer, David Moss, and David and I, there's a constant stream of people coming in there to tell it, like, it's not working anymore. I think I have a better idea. Let's try this software and switch out this. I love this this Phoenix Rising, this constant rejuvenation of the business, even though we're not even 3 years old yet. You know, we've constantly improved ourselves. I think that's pretty key.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that myself. You know, all the sort of companies that are successful and rising, they never get complacent. You know, they're always sort of evaluating what they're doing, whether it's working or not, and everybody sort of gets an open mic to speak their mind. So, you know, that's amazing to hear that you are using similar like tactics and implementing this kind of a culture.
You've always wanted to work in an environment where you're welcomed and your thoughts are, you know, accepted and built upon. You want a really creative environment. And listen, we can't offer a lot of benefits or high salaries, but we can offer this opportunity that you can create something really profound.
Yeah.
And we're going to support you in that endeavor and make it happen.
That's great. All right. Thanks a lot for such a great interview. Now, do you have anything else that I may not have asked so far before we jump on to your, you know, talking about your company and the services that you offer?
That was pretty comprehensive. That was a lot of fun. That conversation was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. I had a lot of fun as well. So now before I let you go, can you tell us a little bit about your company and your services and how, you know, podcasters like myself can reach out to you? Yeah,
well, we're always welcome for the phone call to work with others. This year I've made a concerted effort to push the team to go out to different podcasting events and to start connecting with people in the podcast industry and LinkedIn and other sources. What we've noticed is a big trend towards corporate podcasting. So we produce our own shows, but now we're getting hired by companies to help them create their own podcast.
Yeah.
So we have a lighting company called Illumatech, and we created a show for them called Illuma Talk, where they talk about key things happening in the advanced lighting industry. And for them, it's like, hey, if 50 people listen to the podcast, that's wonderful. And it's actually improved their sales pipeline because people now are thinking of them as experts in advanced lighting systems. It's worked out brilliantly. We have another client, Cleveland Research. They're doing a podcast for their clients, which are hedge fund owners and managers, mutual fund managers, anyone who's investing in large positions in stocks.
Yeah.
They're doing a podcast every week to talk about what they're seeing in the marketplace and key data points. And they are super thrilled with the results from that podcast as well. So we've learned that a big revenue line for us could, in fact, be corporate podcasts. You know, people produce theirs. And now we're starting to get phone calls like, can you build a network? So now we've got independent people with, I could have 10 or 12 shows. Can you just help us build, you know, the website, the distribution channels, etc.? Well, of course, you know, we've done that.
Yeah.
That may, in fact, prove to be yet another really positive revenue model for us. So we're pretty excited about the position we're in. It's taken 2 hard years. I had hair when we first started the company. and
let's not get started about hair now.
Yeah, all right. You're in the same club. Yeah. All of our senior execs have no hair. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah, that's a sensitive topic for me for sure. Great. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all your wisdom. I'm sure everyone got a lot of value out of it. Thanks a lot.
Hey, take care.
So again, I'm Manuj Aggarwal, and thanks a lot for joining us on Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. And now, if you are an existing or an aspiring technology entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast and sign up for free. I want to make sure more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast and I look forward to helping you with your tech startup.